Welcome to From Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. I'm your host, a holistic healing coach, divorce recovery coach, and a passionate advocate for personal growth and your guide on the journey to healing. This podcast is for those who are struggling with the feelings of loneliness, disconnection, feeling stuck, and who are ready to discover their inner potential and live a life overflowing with love and connection. Inside, we are going to explore the path from pain to transformation, bridging the gap between loneliness and abundance through heartfelt conversations, spirituality, energy work, and self-awareness. So let's get started on this soulful journey together. Welcome to another episode From Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. Today's guest is such a powerhouse, and that is literally how I would describe our very first conversation that we had recently, where we got to know about each other, but the word that I was left with after that conversation was powerhouse. Like, there's so much enrichment and beauty and care that comes from this wonderful lady, Jennifer. And I can't wait for everyone to hear her journey and for everyone to recognize how much power even you have inside of you. You might not recognize it, but you definitely do. Welcome, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you so much, Matina. It has been such a pleasure to get to know you a bit and to now be having this conversation with you. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was a very interesting conversation that we had, and where we got to tap into our own intuition and receive messages, share messages, hold space for each other in a beautiful way. And this conversation is not going to be any different. So introduce yourself for those who don't know you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Masley, and I am an executive transformational coach. And I say executive transformational for two reasons, because I work a lot with founders, CEOs, and in that, high level thinker doer space, and also the transformational space. So it's business, it's strategy, and then the transformational personal space. And so to me, it's one and the same, but important to distinguish the two.
Right.
So it's not typical executive coaching. So yeah, I like to distinguish that. And I came from 10 years in the restaurant world. I built 7 restaurants and exited that world right before the pandemic. And then coaching just came back very naturally into my world as people were needing help during the pandemic and knew that I had exited. So it's been a really beautiful journey. I have 2 children that are my best friends, and I have a Great Dane who is my 3rd child, my 2-year-old daughter Nala.
They exude love.
Oh, they do. They're the most magnificent creatures, and especially Great Danes. They have this, speaking of intuitiveness, they're very empathic. So it's much like seeing a reflection.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting how you introduced yourself, because it is the leadership in you that you have held in your own businesses, but it's also the transformation. It's also that intuitive knowing of what you have welcomed into your life even more. So I want to start with that. Like, what intrigued you then to go into this path, right? That there's always a loneliness or disconnection moment that lead to these big breakthroughs. What was that for you?
That's right. And that's such a great question. When we first connected and that was your question, I thought brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because you're right. We all have that moment. And for me, it was, I ended up in the restaurant world sort of by default, which is interesting. I always tell people there's a lot, the restaurant world is not easy. It is an act of love and service,
Yes.
hustle and all of the things to run and operate restaurants and to build them. And I had a moment where I was in flow and in need. It's that that moment of something needs to shift, and what is that going to be? And it just started, and that's a whole other podcast and story on its own. And so in this building, and just the momentum and the flow came so quickly for me, and I took on so much so fast. And I was in my early 40s and I was invincible. In my mind, I was invincible. And I was working in the sustainability regenerative world of food. And so I was connecting on tours with farmers and then building my own concepts, doing the same and showing people that, yes, we can eat more locally and we can support our local ecosystems, and that is healthier for the body, for the economy, for all of the things. And so a lot of my work was in that world. I also had a radio show. I was working with the government in Ghana to establish and build some systems for growing hemp. And everything was a yes. Everything was a yes. And so in my mind, everything was for people and the planet. And so how could I say no, right? If I was doing this good work that felt so necessary, that I was getting constant reinforcement from people about the work that I was doing and how great it was and how courageous I was. And if you had asked me, I would have told you absolutely no ego in any of this. I am just doing this for the good of the world. And then I hit a brick wall at 150 miles an hour is what it felt like. Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. I woke up one day and I was like, I am so out of alignment. I am so out of alignment. I don't know what's happening in my world. It's spinning so fast. And I had restaurants in multiple states. My children lived in different states. I was on a plane once a week for several years trying to not only operate, but then build and then care for. And so when I woke up and realized I was spinning out of control, and I didn't have, a lot of it was bootstrapping. So I didn't have this big cushion of cash to help build the foundation. And so I was scaling faster than I was able to build my infrastructure. And so I was constantly in that stress mode of cortisol and catch up, which was also very igniting and catalyzing to work harder and go faster. And so when I woke up, I just thought I was having a moment with one of my concepts that I was going to have to close it. And it was my favorite project. And it was a really pivotal moment where I stopped and thought, okay, can I save this? Do I want to save this? Is this something that I even can do anymore? Like I'm spinning. I don't know. I couldn't see straight. And it's not an exaggeration. I thought, well, this is a moment I can either break down or break through. What are you going to do? And so I closed the restaurant and then took a big assessment of my life. And I went and lived on Eleuthera in the Bahamas for a year. But right before I went to Eleuthera, I'd had this moment where I was asked to give a TED Talk. And they wanted me to speak on self-love. And so I thought, well, of course I can speak on self-love. That is what this whole endeavor that I've been doing is about, is self-love. And so I started writing the TED Talk and realized that I actually didn't know what self-love was. And I knew a lot about self-care, and I wasn't even doing that very well. That had let my work and everything take me to the point that even my self-care became stressful to take the time to do that. And I was, sort of autopsying my life and beating myself up. How could you have done this? How could you have made that decision? Why didn't you do this? Which is the opposite of self-love. So one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make was to go back to the committee and say, I can't do this. I don't know what self-love is, and I cannot get up on that stage and fake it. So that was,
Jennifer, yes. It's so important to reflect here, because not only did you recognize how much in a burnout you were living and how you were always on this go, 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 you closed on your favorite project, then you had this opportunity, which is a huge opportunity to have, where the biggest aha moment was like, do I really know what self-love is? And it's interesting that you say self-care. So how would you define self-care now?
So self-care, yes. And it's a part of self-love, 100%. It's a big part of self-love. It's nourishing ourselves, nourishing our bodies with whatever form of movement or body work that our body is asking for and requires, nourishing our mind with taking time away, playing, meditating, whatever brings us more joy, which then
Mhm.
also nourishes the heart, right? There's no separation between the mind, the body, the soul, the heart, however you want to say it. So self-care is very and assessing and looking at our lives and really saying, is this serving me? Is this
Yeah.
something that is expanding me, or is this contracting me? And if it's contracting me, why is that? And so that's very much how I live self-care. And when I went to Eleuthera in the Bahamas and stayed on the island for almost a year, I got really quiet and was really uncomfortable to not have anything to do. And I had people running my other locations that I was deciding where is my life going and what's lighting me up.
Mhm.
And so getting really quiet, lots and lots of meditating, lots and lots of yoga, and just reading and studying and going deep into my heart and my soul. I had already, in my 20s and 30s, I was a health coach and I was a racing triathlons and personal trainer. And so I had coached and I had been in that world of the body and the mind and the psychology of performance and how to treat the body and how to really care and nourish and heal the body. And so it felt very clear to me that it was time to go into my heart or my soul and to go inside and to really find out who I am and what I'm here to do in a way that not only serves humanity, people on the planet, but myself.
Yeah.
I felt when I arrived on the island was that I was everything was projected outward, that I was doing, this work because I felt almost obligated because I could see what was happening in the food world. I knew what needed to happen to shift it. So I felt the sense of obligation. Like you can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee what you've seen, right? And
Right.
so much of the work was that. And I started to get really clear that maybe that's not it. That maybe the thing, our genius, the thing that we're here to do is something that enriches not only people on the planet, but our own hearts, right? It's gotta be
It's a
both.
balance. It's a
Yeah.
balance. Yes.
And in the beginning, it was very nurturing to me to be able to nurture other people, also nurtures myself. And so there was definitely that aspect 100%. I loved everything I was doing when I knew I could see the joy, the appreciation, the gratitude, being in hospitality, making people happy, that was it was so rewarding. And then to see people shift mindset on understanding our food system, where a lot of it comes from, but what's available to us. If we just dig a little into our own local community, we can find all of this wonderful, healthy local food. And, so it was definitely that moment of going, okay, I've gone deep in the body, I've gone deep in the mind. Now it's time to go deep into my heart. And when I came off the island, I ended up exiting and selling the rest of my business. And it was right before the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, people started calling me because they knew I had exited to coach again. And so when I started coaching in a different way than I had previous, where I was specifically health coaching, I realized I had this holistic sort of non-process process that I worked with, which is
Yeah.
vitality. Vitality is our life force. And that comes from understanding our individual body, our individual mind, our individual heart's desires, and being able to connect. I'd had a call with a coach, and there was this very pivotal moment in I think it was January 2021. I know it was January 2021. And we did some deep work for about 90 minutes. And I came out of that experience and I felt that moment where my head and my heart connected. And that was
Wow.
powerful place. It was as if my heart just burst open and I could see light coming out of my heart. And I realized then that I had been thinking so, um, I was all mind. I was all mind. I had the energy of the heart behind what I was doing, but I was strategizing my life from my mind and not truly trusting life, and not, I was trying to control it all. And so when I had that moment and it was like breaking free, I realized that I was on the journey of self-love and to discover, and I had a call with a medium or a channeler during the pandemic. And I had never had a formalized, aside from the palm reader at the bookstore, patient with a psychic. And so this was and she's brilliant. And she lives in Los Angeles. And so I was having this reading with her, and she said, there's something you're supposed to be speaking on. There's something in your heart that wants to open up to you and you to it. And I can't put my finger on it. And so we were going through this whole 90-minute session. At the very end, she said, oh, self-love. Self-love is that's it. And I just was awestruck. And I told her about the TED Talk that was a year previous. And she said, well, girl, you better go figure out what that is, because that's your platform. That's what you're here. That is what you are here to do. And I thought, well, that's interesting, and so then of course, it's hard to ignore that, yeah. Right. And to understand. And it was that moment I was like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. That is what I'm doing. So, 5 years later, I have this moment recently of just sort of the cycle closing, where I realized everything I've been doing for the last 5 years is honoring myself first, and really putting my oxygen mask on first, taking care of myself in a self-care way. But to me, the greatest act of self-love is to look within, is to take the time to see who we are beyond anything else.
Before we dive back in, I have something transformative to share with you. It's called the Alignment Collective. Release, Rebuild, and Rise. My signature group coaching program designed to help you unlock the life you deserve. Every month, we focus on a key area of life, from health to relationships, career, and more. In the first 2 weeks, we energetically release what's holding you back. Then we shift into calling in the abundance and clarity that you desire. And in the final week, we come together for powerful group coaching, sharing our wins, our challenges, and raising the collective energy. Are you ready to release what doesn't serve you, rebuild your foundation, and rise into your potential? Try it for 50% off with discount code GROWTH. Visit matinasingh.com/meditation. The link is also found in the description. I can't wait to support you on this journey.
The exterior of who we are, the labels that other people and we have put on ourselves, and nothing on the outside, everything on the inside, and to go deep within and to really ask those hard questions, the questions I was asking my clients, and then turning that lens on myself, and hiring brilliant coaches to help me through some of the questions that I had so that I could really get straight on. And it wasn't as if there was I was doing the research without realizing it most of the time.
Yes.
And so when this cycle closed, which was a very specific moment sitting at my altar, I felt it. And that's one thing I laugh about, but it's my dad, when I was a child, would always say, if you would just listen, and of course he was talking about listen to your mother, listen to your teacher, listen to the adults in the room, but it was more than that. It was deeper. It was so much deeper. And I get chills every time I think of that, because my dad has been gone for 14 years and I feel him all of the time. And I get that message of just listen, and listen is to get quiet and honor the time and space, take the time and space for ourselves so that we can honor that listening. And so as I've gotten really good, I'm a good listener in a conversation. And so I was like, oh, I just need to apply that here. and just
That is
focus.
very, very intriguing to recognize because, first of all, when we hear words, we can understand the meaning of the word. We cannot understand the depth of the word unless and until we have gone through and have become curious enough in stepping into that. Listening is one of those things. We can understand, oh, listen means I have to pay attention to the other person and follow through. But listening is also internal as you're saying it. It's also allowing yourself to hear your own thoughts, hear your own patterns, recognize everything that you are cultivating and creating in your own life. And that is really what you're talking about.
Yes, yes, yes. And going back to the very start of that, what you just said so brilliantly, it's the embodiment, right, of these lessons. And what I am experienced and have experienced by going internal is I'll have these aha moments. I'm like, oh, right, that concept. Okay, heard, got it, feel it. And then that same concept, not, whenever a year, 6 months, whatever it is, will come back through again. And the understanding is a much deeper embodiment, a much deeper layer. And so to me, it's fascinating because it's like,
Yes.
okay, the knowing, the understanding, and then getting that deeper understanding and being able to apply all of that. That's one expansion. And then the contraction is, going within and letting that settle into the body and then expand outward with that concept to be able to reflect it back out into the world. And this is what I love about this journey.
This goes back to balance. You're
right.
literally saying balance. It's not only contracting ourselves and going inwards, also the expansion of things. It's allowing this game from inside and outside to become in a beautiful balance. And what you shared earlier, Jennifer, was really about being expansive to the outside, but then having some disconnection with the inside.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And being aligned with our lives, right? Just thinking about the alignment. And it's like, if we're going so fast and we're afraid and we're not aligned, that's when things, the fray continues to grow and grow and grow and we spiral. And, there was many moments of loneliness in this to where I thought, does everyone feel this way? Is this something that we're all experiencing? And what does it mean to truly love and honor ourselves first so that this doesn't have to be this way? It does not have to be this way. And so really going through and, I now have these tenets that I talk about and I'm writing about and coaching, which is all of the tenets of self-love that as I've gone back through, I'm one of those people that has 25 journals and my notes on my computer and my phone, texting myself and voice notes. Yes. So going back and just putting all those pieces together and realizing, oh, yeah, this is what this is. And just really getting into, someone asked me a question not too long ago, if you could give the world any one thing, what would it be? And the answer was easy. It's the liberation and joy to know and to trust that whatever happens, there is a peace, there is a foundation of peace within us. It's that everything is okay always, no matter what.
Everything is okay, no matter what.
That's right. Everything is okay all the time, no matter what.
And the human mind can fight that. The human mind can tell you, like, no, it isn't. This is happening in the world. That's happening, and lean into the chaos. But what you really are saying is not everything is okay, no matter what externally. It's internally
That's right.
where you have your power, where you stand today, where you are choosing to put your energy and life into right now. That's that internal alignment, that self-love connection that goes beyond the haircuts and the massages and all of those things. What you're really sharing here, Jennifer, is from the moment where you were this badass leader leading 7 different restaurants in different states and taking care of the kids and doing all of the beautiful things that you felt so called to show the world how beautiful our ecosystem truly is, to then finding the ecosystem inside of you.
That's right. That's a brilliant way to say it. Thank you. That's thank you. Thank you. Yes. And that's right. And to me, that is the greatest act of self-love, because out of that is where we find our boundaries.
Yeah.
Is where we begin to really trust. And I often wonder, fear and faith cannot live in the same house.
Right.
And so if we trust God, if there is a creator, a God, a being, a force that we acknowledge and trust as the all-knowing, the reason we're all here, the great mystery, then we have no choice but to trust ourselves and to trust life.
So true.
So that, right? And that comes out of that going into the depth of our being and really and just allowing ourselves to get really honest with ourselves first and then with everyone around us.
Right.
And that's
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say that's typically the hardest thing, is we start to get really honest with ourselves, and then we may see some of the changes that need to be made in our external world to honor that truth. And that's where people oftentimes stop.
Yeah.
Because it's too hard to look at the outside and think, oh my gosh, this career that I've had is actually not it. And how am I going to make this transition? Or this relationship is not it. How am I going to make this transition? How am I going to possibly do this? And to then trust, so you get truthful and then you trust that this is where the magic is in the trust of knowing our truth and then trusting that we have everything we need to make those changes.
Yes. I have to ask you, at the beginning of your share, you said you didn't know what self-love truly is. How would you define self-love now?
Self-love is the courage to take a step back, to assess our lives, and to go inside and to take that inward journey and to really find out who we are and what our heart's desire is asking us to do in the world. It's finding our genius.
Wow. Wow. It's finding your genius. My goodness. That is the most beautiful explanation put in words that I have heard, because it is definitely courage.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, the courage to do it, because again, when we get really honest with ourselves, oftentimes we see the changes that we need to make on the outside world. And that's where, again, that's where the trust, the courage comes in to actually take the action to make the changes and to be patient and to know and trust our intuition, to trust and listen. So it's all everything we've talked about in one container, right? And so really taking some deep breaths, assessing our lives, getting honest, and then coming up for air to say, okay, here's what needs to happen next. And maybe in that moment, you don't know how to do it, and that's okay. Just putting that intention out and that reflection out will give you back what you need. And it's amazing when people take the journey, and I've walked lots of people through the journey, and it's incredible to watch what we are capable of. The Marianne Williamson quote, my favorite ever, who are we not to honor and step out and be our own light? We are children of God, and we are made in the image and likeness of God. And if that's true, and it is, then all we're being asked to do is light up. Do what lights us up, and that will be it. Because that energy, that vibration, that frequency then emanates outwards, and we're all filled with joy, and we're all liberated from that the expectations. Then we're all these little hummingbirds buzzing around with all this joy, doing the things, nectar, and sharing it with everyone else. And it's brilliant, it's beautiful, it's easy, and it's also super hard.
And that's the beautiful duality of it.
Yeah.
But this conversation is bringing me joy. It's allowing the humanness and the spiritual, the oneness, the light in us to come together and to really honor ourselves first before we honor anything else in this world.
That's right. That's right. And it's not selfish. It is the single most important thing that we can do.
And I could not agree more. That is amazingly put to words. And I love how you shared your journey from being the person that you were expected to be in this world, even though you were driven by your own ideals, to coming to ground with how are these all ideals now connected with me in my heart, making that alignment, and now helping others feel their own alignment, bring that transformation, as well as the business, the strategy side of things, a practical way of living together, and combining it in a way that allows others to live a more fulfilled life.
That's right. That's right. And it's really interesting because I have two demographics of clients that come into me, and it's been fascinating to watch this happen. Men in their 50s and 60s that are in that space of what's next, what used to fulfill me no longer fulfills me. And so it's always personal. And I always say, what's happening in your business is happening in your personal life. What's happening in your personal life is happening in your business. There is a connection. So it's always both. That's the executive transformational piece. And the women that I typically coach are in their mid 30s to mid 40s who are going through this process of shifting into their most powerful. And it's such a brilliant, and I love both to watch and to walk men through the journey of their hearts, and then to help empower women. And, I always say it's like coaching for me feels like someone has walked you to the edge of the cliff, and you're standing, and there's a 20-foot gap that you need to make the jump. And on the other side is that white liminal space where anything is possible, and you feel pushed up against that edge for whatever reason. And a coach will stand with you, hold your hand, and make sure that you make the leap. And then when you get to the other side together, usher through that creative process. And so I just, how the two different demographics that have come to me, it's the same thing. It's just a different container for each. The journey of the heart and the empowerment of women, and being able, and that there's heart space in that too, right? Opening their hearts to their own power, and allowing them to see who they really are. And we as women, we've come so far. We have come so far. Society has allowed us to come so far finally, right? And so it's all of it. And there's still that piece that where women helping women and serving women in a way that helps empower and usher and nurture into their greatness is just, there's nothing better.
What I can see your face just light up as you're talking about it and as you are just embodying your own growth to help now any client to get to their growth. And it's amazing. It really is amazing. Now we have a little ritual on this podcast where I have a question for you that the previous guests have left. And I'll ask you to leave a question for the next guest after. So the question for you I have is, what does living in overflow mean to you?
That's a great question. That is a great question. What does living in overflow? Well, at this point in my life, what I've learned, if it's not fun, I'm not going to do it. So I want fun, I want playfulness, I want joy, and that to me is overflow. So whatever it is that lights my heart up, it's a yes. If there's,
oh my gosh.
If it's anything but, it's a no, thank you, and good luck.
And this is the clarity. This is the boundary that you were talking about earlier. So I love that you're holding yourself upon that and just saying it with love. Saying it with love, yes, and saying it with love, no. It's okay.
Right. That's right. And the greatest service we can do is say no, because if it doesn't honor us and we're going into something with a hesitation or a no, you're not honoring the person that is sitting before you, asking you to do something or say something or write, whatever it is.
I agree. My goodness, this has been an amazing, amazing conversation. I can't wait for everyone listening to tap down into the description, get to know Jennifer more, get to know her magic, get to know what it is that she truly, truly believes in and stands for in this world. And everyone who is listening, thank you for listening. And thank you, Jenna, for showing up and sharing your story so lovingly and openly.
Thank you, Matina. Thank you. Matina, thank you so much for having me on. You are such a light. I love the work that you're doing in the world. You light up the screen with that smile of yours and those brilliant questions, and keep honoring yourself and self-loving yourself.
Mm-hmm. I will. I'm so glad that we got to connect in this way and we got to have this conversation and share with the world who hopefully will find their own nuggets and their aha moments that they can lean into even more.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope this episode has helped you to feel less alone in finding tools towards a life which is overflowing with love and purpose. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to reach more individuals who are seeking healing and personal growth just like you. And don't forget to take a screenshot and share your aha moments on your Instagram stories and tag me, Matina. See you next week. Take care.